So we're just gonna get started. So this evening you'll be hearing readings from Venita Blackburn, Stephen Church, Jarrar, myself, Tim Skeen, Mai Der Vang, and Brenna Womer, all in that order. So, and at the end of the evening, the poets and writers will be signing books and chapbooks up here in the, or you can purchase their books and chapbooks here in the front. Nice line down the side, and then we'll be signing them out in the foyer out here. So with that, I'm going to introduce our first reader, the wonderful Venita Blackburn, whose stories have appeared in journals such as The New Yorker and the Paris Review. She's the author of Black Jesus and Other Superheroes, winner of the Prairie Schooner Book Prize, and the collection of stories How to Wrestle a Girl, which was published in 2021. Venita was a finalist for the Lambda Literary Prize, and the book was also a New York Times Editor's Choice. Her debut novel, Dead in Long Beach, California, will be published in January of 2024 and is about the mania of grief, all of human history, and a lesbian assassin at the end of the world. Please join me in welcoming Venita Blackburn.
Brynn, for that lovely introduction. And you guys hear me okay? Is it smooth? Okay, good. I'm going to read from all of my books, and you're going to have to deal with it. But so it'll just be, it's going to be one line from the first two books, and I'll read a scene from my brand new novel that very few people have heard. So you'll get some of that. And I did this because I wanted to sort of show you the arc of my writing here at Fresno. So when I showed up, I had just this book when I was hired. I mean, I didn't show up, I was hired. And so I had one book to my name and an idea for another one, and that was it. And that was 2018. And then all these years later, I ended up writing How to Wrestle a Girl, in a couple of years, and then recently I finished Dead in Long Beach, California, as my very first novel that's being published. I've written other ones, but we don't want to talk about that. So I'm going to theme the reading strangers, because I think a lot of you guys don't really know each other, but it's strangers in terms of transformative moments with strangers, and also encounters with strangers when you're in a transformative moment of your life. So we're going to go through it that way. So I'm going to start with one line from my very first collection, very first book. And this is a story. I have not read the entire story out loud, I don't think, ever. But it is one that is important to me because I wrote it based on an actual experience that I had. So I grew up in Compton, California. And it's kind of, it's an urban area. It's not as much, gangs and rap music as people think. It's just, it's a working class suburb in Los Angeles County. But all of the urban decor exists. We do have the gangs, we got the drugs, and all the other things. And one very important part was a local prostitute named Nikki that I would see sort of on a daily basis, kind of in my neighborhood. And I had a close-up encounter with her at the Jack in the Box drive-thru line with my dad. So she came up to the window, and it was our first sort of, really close face-to-face kind of encounter. And she solicited a blowjob from my father. And I learned a lot of things in that moment. Nothing salacious happened beyond that. It was not accepted. Everything's fine. But I do remember her sort of framed in the drive-through window and kind of discovering all these things about the possibilities of human interaction. My own father, about capitalism, about all these kinds of pressures on the body as a woman. And the illusion of safety, even sort of, I'm in my car. I thought I felt safe, and then suddenly, someone is out there, and how close we are to these moments of movement through possibilities. So, I'm going to read the final line, inspired from that moment of this story. So, I see Nikki there in her long T-shirt, a junky hooker's ball gown, no pants, no skirt, no panties. Legs out in the sun, watching me walk down the aisle draped in white baptismal robes, smiling at me like she had a secret. Like together we would crack the cocoons frozen around us, remake the earth, like we might be there in that space of light forever. All right. Okay, let's go to the next one. I could pretend to be a poet for a second. All right, so the next one, I'm not going to give too many details about the inspiration for this. The title is Dick Pic. So, but the story is about kind of that transformative moment of youth. Two sisters kind of having this encounter with men, encounter with the silly ways they have. So this is the final line. We were laughing, and with all this new knowledge and treasure, there seemed opportunities. All right, and now for the full scene. So I'm going to read out of my book. The debut novel comes out in January. I don't have a pre-order link. There might be one. I'm just not good at that kind of stuff. But I do like the cover. It's very shiny. And so it is kind of funny, but it's also about a very serious thing. So there's a brief mention of suicide at the beginning, very, very brief. And take care of yourselves as you see fit as we go forward. But the story is not about that specifically. It's about grief, like I said, and it's also about a very specific moment that I had. So my mother passed when I was 25 years old, and we were very close. So she was my best friend. That's not the case with everybody, but for me, it was sort of losing the closest person to me, my friend, my mother, someone that I had loved. We were never even apart for more than a week or so in my whole life up to that point, and then suddenly gone. And then you're dealing with this. You feel it in your body. You know, breathing is hard. Everything is hard. And you have to pretend to be normal. You have to go to the grocery store. You got to buy broccoli and a pineapple. And then people ask you silly questions like, how are you? And then you have to decide how to answer. You decide how to be present for other people when you're barely present in your own self. So it was about that moment. So I'm going to read the scene. And I think the only thing you need to know is the main character, Coral, has just discovered her brother dead from suicide the day before. But instead of handling that, like I don't know how you would handle that, she does everything pretty crazy, pretty wrong. So she essentially has a psychotic break and has to sort of let another consciousness take over while she essentially just goes on with her day, with her life. So the very next day is just the thing that was on her calendar. But she has her brother's cell phone, so she's been responding to people as her brother since that happened the day before. So that's sort of the context of this scene. And there's also a chunk of text messages in here that are not written to be read, really. So when one person is reading, one character named Kai is speaking, I'm going to go like this. And when it's Coral pretending to be her brother responding, I'm going to go like this, just so you can sort of distinguish them. And I think we're good to go. Got it? All right, and the name of the scene is Brunch at the End of the World. Get there. The day after Jay committed suicide, Coral had a brunch date with her friends and did not cancel. We believe in confronting danger, unblinking, face to the flames, teeth bared to bullets. We do not wince at pain unless that is the practice of the hour. To wince is to acknowledge the potential for defeat, fight for flinching. We are unsure whether danger fell for Coral in the face of her friends or in the judgment at her absence. Coral had stayed at Jay's apartment and did not head to her home in La Brea until after sunrise. She owned a bungalow with a yard in one of 1,000 overpriced neighborhoods in Los Angeles. The sky was bright and blue, light reflected from everything that morning. The shine in the washed cars of her neighbors, the glimmer of dew on the shrubs, finger succulents, velvety and swollen, which everyone used to replace grass, studded the front lawn. It was a beautiful day. Where she was, Coral approached Ilfernile, feeling as if her throat were turning to steel, all the veins and muscles hardening, the blood squeezing through clogged plumbing. It was the same feeling she had after eating a family-sized bag of chips. She wanted to expel whatever was in her body through every possible exit port, but relief was not possible. The thing inside her was not going to come out. It was hot. There were misters running at the entrance under a green awning. Coral walked through the veil of mist and jumped back as if spit on. She remembered that the devices were supposed to be a luxury. She walked through a forest of people, big people and small people at tiny tables with barely enough room for their bread baskets, saucers of herbs and olive oil, and $18 mimosas, not bottomless. The friends were on the patio in the distance. One waved her over. A waitress backed into her suddenly. Liquid hit the top of Coral's left foot. A dog barked, then was silenced. The restaurant was flooded with the clatter of voices, so many that it seemed quiet. So much noise that there was nothing at all to hear. Coral suddenly realized it was all meant to be pleasant, where she wanted to be. The friends appeared, talking all at once, greeting her all at once, their heads seeming to spin like coins. She was unable to discern a face or a mouth, just the knowledge that there was one amid the blur. Coral wanted to be somewhere quiet, where there were no heads unwinding like rubber bands, somewhere where her own throat felt soft and pliable and she could turn her neck without pain. Somewhere with water stretched out in front of her or heavy in the sky above, about to be squeezed out. Somewhere even the insects knew not to make too much of a sound because something special was about to happen again. Something they didn't know they were looking forward to until it arrived, and now there was nothing more important anywhere in the world. The unique relationship to water among the living was incomparable to any other. It was more than sex, murder, food, or faith. It was their God and their horror. Who was she? Like most people less than 50 years old and more than 9, Coral was a curated exhibit carefully constructed in the presentation of self. First, she wore dresses because children in the 1980s were treated like peach pits, where the body was the seed and the resulting fruit of a luminous array of ruffles and lace. Then came 2 decades of Sunday services in a Baptist church. Then came various declarations of gay, followed by estrangement from her parents, mostly her father, the burial of those parents, and the duplicitous sensation of suffering and relief forever after. Ultimately, Coral met all expectations of gender, race, politics, education, and diverted from those expectations only when appropriate for a change in audience. She did so consciously and subconsciously, as was the norm. In a slight deviation from normal, Coral became a successful artist, writing and drawing fantasies into reality, and luckily found more audiences with money, as well as a curious community of peers, competitors, and patrons. Who are they? The friends would have eaten her. If promised anywhere from $100 to $1 million for tearing off a bit of Coral's flesh and swallowing it down, those friends across the table with half-chewed omelets and drops of vodka and tomato juice lingering under their tongues would choose the money. In the clinic for death from loneliness, we study the idea of friends. We distill friendship to the fibrous root where people have no expectation except time. It is easy. There are no transactions, no obligations, just memories and the desire to do it all again one more time. Sometimes blood families can be friends, but not always. We've concluded that friends are discovered through chemical compatibility like lovers, but with less genital contraction or bonding through experiences, especially trauma and triumph. A single devastation or victory can sustain a friendship for a lifetime. One of the spinning heads asked Coral a question in low voice, as if it were a secret. "How are you?" she asked. Coral thought about the answer briefly, the one she would give and the one she would keep. "My brother is dead. He was not dead, and then he was dead. Who are you in this place? Why have you kept me here?" The head stopped spinning and Coral could see eyes, dark brown and alert, the eyeshadow, low lid, signs of ptosis from aging, and a mustache painted in foundation. "Bad date," Coral actually said. "Or good one. They're all the same to me." The head spun again, disappearing into laughter. She had slept on her brother's strip mattress in the humid apartment, waiting for something. Who she wanted to be. Present. Coral wanted to be acutely aware of her feet on the brick patio, the drying drops of liquid on the top of her foot, the individual conversations taking place around her and in front of her, the person she used to be and the person she would be from then on, and to be able to choose between them like items on a drive-through menu. Today she would be 17-year-old Coral, drinking wine coolers with friends in the back of a Toyota coupe before going to the mall to steal cheap jewelry. Tomorrow she would be Coral 7 years from now, safely through the grieving process and managing an almost happy life. Who she wanted them to be. She wanted the friends to be themselves, but not with her. Let them exist where they needed to be, but not with her. She wanted them blind, transformed into beautiful bats with too much lip gloss, hanging upside down from the restaurant ceiling, free to shit on the other patrons and gnaw on handfuls of overripe plums. She wanted them to be that kind of happy, if that kind of happiness were possible. Who she would be later. Later, Coral would be a fish. When the force of death had dismantled the atoms and sent them into the bellies of other things more than just a few times. First she would suffer, then wonder, then for a brief moment be healed, then start over. A phone rang. The spinning heads looked at Coral's bag. The ringtone was odd. It was Jay's phone. Jay's phone rang again, and a plate of ahi tuna tartare appeared under Coral's face. She didn't remember ordering it, and no one seemed alarmed. Coral excused herself to the restroom. Good restaurants have bad restrooms. It has been documented. It is a fact. In a good restaurant, the restroom is small and poorly ventilated. The line is always long and full of terror. People are not able to do more than one thing very well at any given time. The terror comes from not just waiting, but being alone with one's body and thoughts in a hallway too cramped to lift an arm without touching someone's shoulder or ass. Coral seized Jay's phone and let the vibrations of it roll through her palm a few more times before opening the messages. Here we go. You're a no-show. Never in 19 years, bro. What the fuck? I'm worried. What's up? Is it Kay? She cool? Vicky brought in RJ, but she flipping out, threw half the smoked sausages away in the break room. LOL. Yo! I'm in the hospital. All that fucking punctuation, Coral said aloud. Oh, my foot is smashed and had to have surgery. Oh shit, bro, you sound bad. You Vicky won't, how long? Better. Coral lost her language translation energy again as the air became more carbon dioxide than oxygen around her in the bathroom line. She began to scroll through past messages with this Kai person to understand many things. She learned that Jay possessed terrific grammatical sense, whereas Kai had almost none. There was a running joke/obsession with sausages in the break room that Coral thought might be a euphemism for something male and sexist. But knowing Jay, she believed it was sincerely about food. Coral felt compelled to understand Jay's job better, an essential tactic for infiltration of enemy territory. Line of the restroom. The line for the restroom moved by a single individual. Everyone shifted forward with the assumption that more than one person would move along, but that assumption was replaced with despair and resignation. When cattle were slaughtered for food, the process involved arranging the animals in a curved or zigzag line because the end of the line was the end of their lives, and it was important that none of them could see that far in advance. Small talk. Coral put down her phone and looked up to find a pair of eyes fixed on her. The body those eyes were attached to had an awful intention. It wanted to talk to Coral. And she could have looked away, could have willed herself into a coughing fit that everyone would back away from, politely or otherwise. Coral had no defenses at the ready, so she would take the first blow unblocked. Is it a birthday? Your friends are so happy at the table. Yes, Coral replied, not mine. Coral often lied to strangers. During small talk with anonymous individuals, you can be anyone. Most people lived unconscious lives, surrendering their thoughts to the inventions of the day. Thinking was dangerous. Thinking as someone else would think was something other than dangerous. Risk-free, yet thrilling. The stranger took a pose of lamentation and said, "They don't sing for birthdays here." Thank God, Coral declared. The stranger laughed. Coral smiled. "My birthday is in the winter," Coral said. "Holiday season. That's great. It was like a double party every year as a kid. Christmas pie and birthday cake. Some people hate it." "Oh, I know. My daughter's is in December. She's always cranky. In fact, she really is always cranky." "Oh no." "Yes, she's having surgery this month, too." "Is it serious?" No, not at all. "I had a thing with my liver," Coral lied. "They did a biopsy." She liked this twist in the conversation very much. "Oh my gosh, everything good?" "Well, it's to be determined." The stranger reached for her phone. Coral had inadvertently ended the conversation by threatening further discussion of medical ailments with a woman that possessed the emotional capacity of a fern, craving only sunshine and moist air. Coral felt almost victorious and very, very alone. She wanted more. "What was your daughter's surgery?" "Vicious." In an unsolicited attack, Coral returned to what was known as small talk with the wounded woman in line. A man approached the hall, observed the density of bodies, and immediately retreated. She left the country for the procedure. Oh, for a specialist? For a better price? BBL. BBL. Coral feigned ignorance. She wanted to hear the words. She wanted to be above vanity. She wanted to be above the bone and tissue and blood that gravity pulls so relentlessly to keep them knotted to the dirt. The woman aged suddenly. The tendrils of blonde hair frosted her brow and cheek. The rouge seemed heavy and unabsorbed. She gestured to her ass. Oh. Mm-hmm. Jay's phone buzzed again and Coral gave it her attention. The woman whose daughter was having her buttocks enhanced sighed in relief. When do you plan to be back? Vicky been quiet. Tomorrow for sure. Cool. Have some get well flowers ready. Coral stared for a minute until the phone turned black in silent mode. Flowers, she thought? Fuck. Coral checked the message list and saw 4 unread texts from Vicky. The line moved. She wanted to say more. She had more to say. She looked for the woman, but she was next as the door opened. Coral reached for the woman to tap her on the shoulder to say, my brother is dead today. I'm not used to that, and I don't know anyone to tell. All of the women at my table are strangers to me, and I've seen their faces for years and years. I knew better people once, maybe, but I did not keep them, or I was not kept. How do we get to places like this? Can we go back the way we came again? Are mothers always thinking of their daughters like you do? What is that like? How do you not implode from being that in love? Coral looked behind her to the line of tense faces, all suddenly gazing her way at once, and for a moment she felt transported to a stage, speaking before 100 guests, all of them brilliant and gorgeous as half-gods, suspended out of time, peering into the edge of the universe, waiting for what was promised, for salvation, for mercy. Okay, that's it for me. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Next up, the merciful Stephen Church is the author, most recently, of the essay collection, I'm Just Getting to the Disturbing Part, on work, fear, and fatherhood. His essays have been published and anthologized widely, including in the Best American Essays and Best of Brevity. He is a founding editor and editor-in-chief for our nationally recognized literary magazine, The Normal School. Welcome, Stephen.
The emotional capacity of a fern. That's fucking funny. One of the many things I enjoy about working with Venita and all of my colleagues, I'm so happy to be here tonight and to read with you all for the first time in many years. And it's nice to see you all here. I'm going to read sort of the beginning and a little bit from the middle and then the end, or sort of the end of this essay that I wrote on, about my brief dalliance with the Grateful Dead and the song Touch of Grey and some other stuff. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. It's just before dusk on the western edge of the continent in the summer of 1992, and as the sun slowly sinks, I am rising. 150 feet in the air above the Shoreline Amphitheater in Mountain View, California. To my west spreads one stage out wide, the Pacific Ocean, and not far from my perch, the other stage where the Grateful Dead are doing a sound check for their first of a 3-show residency. And perhaps there is a thin veil of clouds, something poetic and perfect, a landscape tinged with purple and orange, the kind of setting that looks like an album cover, so perfect it must be fake, or at least imagined, or enhanced by other substances. And beneath me in every other direction spreads a vast sea of deadheads, swathed in tie-dye and Guatemalan print, all of them gathered and settled and swaying for the night before they and the band pack up like a traveling circus and head to Las Vegas for another round of shows. I am rising now, lifting above the masses, floating in a metal basket suspended from a large red construction crane. Beneath me, growing smaller by the second, is an oversized beanbag laid out on the asphalt parking lot. This is my landing pad. I'm strapped into something like a climbing harness with an enormous elastic bungee cord tied to my feet. I am rising still, even if 1 week ago my brother was killed in a car accident. I am rising even if 3 days ago I attended his funeral in Kansas, because right now, in this moment, I'm only thinking about the ground beneath my feet and the way everyone seems so small from this distance. Somewhere down there, my girlfriend waits for me to leap. Somewhere else, my parents wait for me to come home. 150 feet is roughly the height of a 15-story building, and when the crane reaches the top, the guy in the basket with me, my guide for this experience, opens the waist-high metal door, points to a small step barely big enough for my Birkenstocked feet. He smiles and gestures for me to move as if he's shooing a dog out the door. Behind him, the ocean stretches out endlessly and unforgivingly blue. I ease out onto the step and he shuts the gate behind me, giving me a hearty 2 thumbs up. The basket sways a bit from my weight. Beneath me, the sea of dead undulates. The beanbag has all but disappeared into the crowd and the parking lot, and the countdown begins. No warning, no pep talk or other preparation. He just starts counting down from 10. As I gaze down at the scene below me, I'm thankful the magic mushrooms I ate haven't really started to kick in yet. Because in that moment, as the count hits 1, I jump from the crane and plunge through the California air at the end of a bungee cord, bouncing once and twice and 3 times, and nothing else matters except the unmitigated rush of joy that shoots through my body, and I scream as loud as I possibly can, "Fuck yes!" and believe I am affirming something more than the moment, something about life itself in the face of immeasurable loss. Dangling at the end of my rope, I still believe then in the possibility of happiness, even if only in such fleeting glimpses. I am, in this suspended moment, though it will not last, what was called a touch head. That is, I am a fan of the band The Grateful Dead, who began listening to them and obsessing over their music after their only top 10 hit, the 1987 release of the song Touch of Grey. Though it sounds happy and optimistic, like an anthem of survival, it's a song that gets darker and weirder and more dystopian as it goes, so much so that near the end, things are worse than they appear. Our protagonist is struggling, the rent is in arrears, the dog has not been fed in years. And to top it off, his cows are giving kerosene instead of milk, and his son can't even read at 17. And when the boy does talk, the words he knows are all obscene. It's an unpleasant picture to say at least, a family drama that would, in my estimation, not be easy to survive. It's hard to look around you at such a life and think, we will get by. By the time we reached Deer Creek Amphitheater in Indiana for another stretch of shows in the summer of '92, something had shifted inside of me. I was having trouble feeling happy, even in small moments. The venue was outside of Noblesville, Indiana. What I gathered was a suburb of Indianapolis. At the time, it was surrounded by farm fields, cows, and a whole lot of nothing else. Though my brother had died in Indianapolis, just miles away, I did not visit the city or the site, preferring to remain in the safer suburbs of grief. About a mile or so from Deer Creek, we passed a junkyard with a sign out front that read, "Camping, $10, water, ice, toilets." So we pulled into the lot. We had no other place to stay. We planned to sleep in the car if necessary. At the back of the lot, a man in a tow truck was dragging wrecked cars around, clearing campsites. A row of porta potties were lined up on one side of the yard. We paid our money and parked. The ground was littered with those small, jagged fragments of broken safety glass, but we managed to clear a site for our tent. When we drifted off to sleep that night, there were maybe a few dozen other deadheads camping with us, and you could hear their voices mixing with music and the crackling of campfires, and it seemed kind of nice, even oddly quaint, like something you'd tell a funny story about later. That time we camped in the junkyard. When we woke up the next morning and emerged from our tent, it wasn't so quaint or funny any longer. There were now hundreds of people packed into the junkyard, campers crammed into every space possible, pressed up against the perimeter of stacked cars, deadheads milled around, cooking over open fires, strumming instruments or kicking a hacky sack. Later that afternoon, we walked a mile or so down the road to the concert venue, planning to spend a few hours in the parking lot before heading into the show. It all looked different now, though. I'd been home for a few weeks between the Cali shows and our trip to Indiana, and I think part of me understood the shift in my mental health, while another part of me thought that I needed to be back out here on the road following the dead. But as we strolled into the vast carnival of heads and humanity at Deer Creek, I knew I'd made a mistake. The air shimmered with bad energy. When we returned to the junkyard hours later after a mostly forgettable show, we returned to tire fires burning amidst the wreckage, acrid black smoke curling into the sky. Two friends who'd parked just outside of the gates of the junkyard had their car broken into, windows smashed in, and everything they owned stolen. Inside of the gates, one of the junkyard employees stalked around the campground with a pistol strapped to his hip, yelling at people as if he was enforcing some kind of invisible order. I watched him pick up a burning tire off a fire and toss it to the side, where it continued to smolder in the grass, and I thought it was entirely possible that somebody might get hurt tonight. As it turned out, after those shows at Deer Creek, I would never again attend another Grateful Dead concert. Not out of some principled stance or concern for my safety, but just because I lost that connection, that investment in the band and what it represented. And I lost that side of myself, if I'm being honest. Some days I think I'm always trying to get back there, to find that dead self again. But he's been gone a long time. Thank you. Jarrar is the author of the memoir Love's an Ex-Country. Oh, do you want me to read? Oh, sorry. The novel A Map of Home and the collection of stories Him, Me, and Muhammad Ali. She's a filmmaker and actor who has appeared in independent films on the A24 shows Rami and #1 Happy Family USA. She's a recipient of a Creative Capital Award and an American Book Award, as well as awards and fellowships from the Lannan Foundation, Penn, and others. Please welcome Jarrar.
Hi everyone, I am reading from home. This reading is dedicated to the memory of Camila O'Hoffer, an old student of ours who passed away last year. I hope everyone's having a good evening, and I am reading from a forthcoming book called How to Raise a Child Alone, an Instruction Manual. Everyone says children don't come with an instruction manual. I'm here to tell you they do. 1. Breed with an idiot. You meet him at a bar when you're barely 18. Your gay guy friends from college think he's extremely hot. 4 months later, you're pregnant. There are no reality TV shows yet about young single moms. Your life itself is now like a reality TV show, with no budget, housing, film crew, editor, lighting, host, or set. Your father will kick you out, and your mother will keep calling every day and checking on you. While pregnant, you're in college. The college will not allow a baby to live with you in the dorms. This is a liability for them. A baby shouldn't be surrounded by weed smoke and bottles of cheap beer. You will have to move in with the man who impregnated you. Call your gay guy friends and tell them this is all their fault. Tell them they need to be there for you when you give birth, knowing they definitely will not be. Give birth in a hospital where the nurses feel bad about your age. Only 18, they yell across the maternity halls. This one's a baby. They point to you, agree with them. You don't want to leave the hospital, ever. You don't want to be away from their care and their kindness. Your baby is absolutely perfect. You hold him and cry. You count his toes and notice they are crunched together. Worried, you ask the nurses why, and they explain that he was just swaddled inside you and hasn't fully stretched out yet. They assure you that he's okay. You kiss his cheeks and feed him from your own milk. This makes you feel powerful. As he nurses, you feel like you are spinning straw into gold, that there is a thread of pure gold silk unspooling from your body into his, nourishing him and keeping him safe. The hospital staff will ask if you want to purchase a breast pump. You can't afford one, so they'll give you a manual one that takes 30 minutes to pump out an ounce of milk. Decide to just stay with your baby at all hours and feed him on demand. Your own mother and father policed your eating for years. You will never do the same to your baby. At some point, you must decide whether or not to circumcise your child. Don't do it. Your child will be scarred for life, literally, and he will let you know how he feels about it. When he's nearing his 17th birthday, he'll be angry with you while you go for a walk through San Francisco one spring. He'll ask you why you made such a violent choice. When you tell him you were only a few months older than he is now when you made the decision, he will say, "But I already know it's violent. My age doesn't cloud that fact for me." When you say that you thought, because you were Muslim, that you were supposed to be circumcised, he will say, "Well, but I'm not really Muslim. I did Ramadan once." When you say that you assumed because you were so young and naive, it wouldn't hurt him, he will say, "Bullshit. How could you not know?" When you say, "I believed it would be the most hygienic choice," he will say, "Mom, I know how to wash my dick." Circumcising him will cause him pain where there should only be pleasure. His missing foreskin will always be a reminder that he's incomplete, unsafe, and harmed. Do not circumcise your child. The world is gentle and effective soaps. Number 2, leave his father. Do it when your child is only a few months old. Do it because you don't want your child to spend every night hearing his mother being abused, seeing his father do the abusing. Leaving him means you're breaking a cycle and healing generations to come. Unfortunately, it also begins a tedious bureaucratic process that spells out, once again, how much the world hates mothers. At some point, you will have to fill out paperwork with the courts to properly retain custody of your own child. Do this and hope the court appoints you a badass defender. It does, and you work out a monthly visitation system. There is no reason your ex should be able to see you again. Ask your family to do the drop-offs and pickups. Your family says yes because you have now also moved back into their house, the house they kicked you out of when you needed support the most, the house you thought you'd never have to step foot in again, the house you used to sneak out of just 2 years earlier. You are the eldest daughter in an immigrant family. Going back home to raise your own child means you are now in charge of everyone you were already in charge of, plus your own child. Feel angry and irritated by the injustice of this fact. But don't let that entrap you. Don't stop going to school. In fact, go to the financial aid office with your baby and sit in the waiting room and let him cry loudly until someone decides to see you and give you a fellowship. This might take a few different visits. It's worth it. You might still have to take out student loans. Take as many as you can because you will not be able to work full-time for at least a few months. Raising a child alone and working and going to school is doable, but you will need to do one at a time at first. See a juggler's instruction manual. It'll instruct you to start out with one ball. Throwing this ball in an arc to your other hand, you will say, catch. You will do this with 2 balls and then eventually 3, but you have to start with just one. If your school doesn't have a daycare center that is easily accessible, both physically and financially, take your baby to school. If you go to a supposedly feminist college named after a rich white woman, this is doubly important to do. Brown babies deserve safety and space and care. Your brown baby can cry in your psychology class. If your professor complains, file a grievance against him. He has no business teaching psychology at all. If you can't afford a nursing bra, you can use wads of toilet paper in your regular bra instead. Don't use the cheap toilet paper you have at home. Steal toilet paper from the one library bathroom that has softer tissue. 2-ply is heaven against your cracked nipples. The wads of toilet paper must be changed out regularly. If you leak into your shirt, do not feel shame. The leak is yet another way to protest your school's lack of child care for students. If and when you can, shoplift a nursing bra. Make sure there are no security tags. If there are, simply take it to the return section and tell them they forgot to take the tag off when you bought it and that you don't have a receipt. Be ready to behave indignantly if the person behind the counter accuses you of stealing. They probably will not, because seeing a nursing bra might remind them of a time when they were once powerless and unmighty. I'd like to introduce my colleague Brynn Saito. Brynn is the author of 3 books of poetry, most recently Under a Future Sky. A 2023 California Arts Council Individual Artist Fellow, Brynn is the winner of the Benjamin Saltman Award from Red Hen Press and a finalist for the Northern California Book Award. She teaches in the Creative Writing Program at Cal State, located on the traditional lands of the Yokuts and Mono peoples. Currently, Brynn is co-editing with Brandon Shimoda an anthology of poetry written by descendants of the Japanese American Nikkei incarceration, forthcoming in 2025 from Haymarket Books. Please help me welcome Brynn Saito.
I'm going to read 2 poems, I think. This first poem is 13 parts. It really is, it's 13 parts. But they're very short. It's called 13 Ways of Looking at a Teacher Resource. And the poem, 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird? Is that the, yeah, Blackbird. That's where I stole the title from. And it's based on an actual teacher resource that was trying to get students to think about inherited memory and sort of the memories that were passed down from generation to generation. And the mention of the camps is the Japanese American incarceration camps during World War II. So a lot of my book is rooted in that history. 1, what types of memories have you inherited? Stories live in me like sharp lightning flashes across the southern desert. 2, how have they been passed down to you? She said on the train, they packed us like sardines. Or we drove our own cars to the camps. Or I wore a button during the war saying I'm Korean for protection. Then nothing. Then great seas of silence, death quiet and dark, that swallowed us. Then cans in the backyard, crushed and recognizable. Then light in a box, rain in a box, azaleas. 3, what helps you remember them? If you get your face quiet enough, what counts as your father's shadow will speak through it. 4, how have they impacted your life? Into the night and into the streets of the universe I walk with my little blue heart. I rise my hands to the fractured light like the girl I was, aching for safety and rehearsing my freedom in the garden under my father's sky. I got close to whiteness by fear loving my uncle, him and Mercy Me shooting guns in the foothills while the Great Spirit cloistered itself in the dying oaks of an earlier century. Now the air turns. The moonlight eats us happily and we're happy for it. Little hummingbird ghosts gather in a field far from here plotting their revenge. My uncle grows older and closer to death in a trailer park in the Central Valley. I grow skin beyond my skin, rage swelling me beyond the perimeter of my known self. I put this cough drop in my mouth at the beginning, and I can't read with it. So 1 second. Okay. It's like the worst time to do. Yeah, I got my bottle. Worst time to do that, but oh well. Forgive me, poem. 5. Do you think they've changed over time? Stories live in me like sauntering fireweed, misplaced cell clusters, schools of stones. 6. Do you think any of these inherited memories relate to historical events? I tell my students there's no part of us that goes untouched by the angel of history, wings pinned to the air by the storm of progress. 7. What memories of your own have you chosen to share with others? The light sings itself awake. I'm awake at the turn of the 21st century and alive to the turning. Did I ask too large? I'm afflicted with desire and the girlhood wish to lay my body down in the blue summer grass, lit and unlit by the flicker of the setting light. Those shapes and faces sail down the bloodlines. The ghosts grow their nails into me. I remain a romantic. For years I turned the fire inward, bleeding to prove how much I wanted to be here and break the skin and belong in ways undreamt by then to the administered world. 8. What are the differences between memory and history? One gives birth to fire and one gives birth to stones. 9. Do you think history is fixed or objective? No. 10. What is the relationship between the past and the present? Yes. 11. How do we make meaning from the past? Yes. 12. How do you make meaning from the past? See the writer again at the gate of memory. See the writer again. See the writer again at the gate. Gate the writer again at the memory. See the past again at the meaning gate. Past the making, gate the memory. See the meaning? She should drown it. 13. Do you think we have a responsibility to the memories we've inherited? Even the dead, wrote Walter Benjamin, will not be safe from the enemy if he wins. Thanks. Man, this book has been hard to read from. Just feels like you open a portal and they all want to come in. So I'm just going to close with a short prose poem, recent poem. This is for my mom. She's here tonight. Hi, Mom. It's called What is Your Struggle? Your acupuncture doctor calls you a warrior. You hear worrier. Then you hear warrior. What does it mean to believe in one's body? Your mother's massage therapist says her body is ready for a war zone. Hard rock shoulders at high alert, a whole life like that. Why? You didn't grow up in a war zone. You grew up in the suburbs of Central California, the state's vast armpits, a sea-level basin that's also a breadbasket, that's also a place of hot struggle, smog, strip malls, and shadows. The woman warrior didn't just go to battle, says your favorite author at the Friday night craft talk, and that talk actually was held right here with Maxine Hom Kingston, UCMLA, a few years ago. The woman warrior didn't just go to battle, says your favorite author at the Friday night craft talk. She also led the soldiers home. She led them home. Maybe what makes you a warrior isn't so much your rage, but the fact that you'll sacrifice yourself for another kind of peace. When you start writing poems about a woman warrior, a writer you admire says, I like them, but what is she fighting for? Do you know? Do you know what you fight for? What is your struggle? That's the first question the Zapatistas ask when you visit the autonomous territories in the Highland Mountains for the first time. Red masks, mighty women, rebel sky. Your mother hated that you traveled there. She worried the whole time. You wish she could have come with you. More warrior, less worry. You hope all that tension in her back means she's growing wings. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so delighted to introduce my mentor, the poet and faculty member Tim Skeen. He was the winner of the 2001 John Chiardi Prize for Kentucky Swami and the White Pine Press Poetry Prize for Risk in 2014. His most recent book is called Reward. Please join me in welcoming Tim Skeen.
Thanks for being here. Pork chops. Waiting in the cafeteria with a cup of coffee. I order the chops, though I am not hungry. Everything is beyond my control here, except the way I cut the meat into cubes and neatly stack them next to the mashed potatoes. While upstairs, the surgeon uses a scalpel to slice a coin-sized plug of cancer from my wife's forehead, the spot I so often kiss goodnight. How can anyone be that confident? We are living a story written by strangers, and like everything written in prose, I am only interested in the plot. Nothing to worry about, he said. She'll be okay. bowing for Steve Adedisis Mito Smith. At the department party, you were telling me about crows and their importance in religion and mythology, how crows can represent rebirth. That's interesting, I said, and explained that for me, crows are roshis because I listened to them when I lived at a Zen monastery. That's interesting, you said. We never finished talking about crows. Our children grew up as we discussed curriculum. I always meant to ask if you remember that my elementary school daughter drew your portrait with sidewalk chalk near the host's porch at the end of the party. Of all the remarkable people she met for the first time that night, my daughter chose you. Bowing over it together, we laughed and went home before the elements could take your likeness away. Believe it or not, I do aspire to end on a humorous note. Nativity scene. The heads of the three wise men have been broken off and glued on again so many times that the first wise man looks at his feet, the second stares over his shoulder, and the third wise man has an ear-to-ear smirk where his chin should be. To some, this may be sacrilegious, but in my parents' home, where everything is out of plumb, they seem a tribute to our three carpooling neighbors who left the broken down Ford on the side of the road, then walked the rest of the way home after a shift where they assembled the new cars. It's a little dark up here, I have to say. After the war, I buy the fellow a drink before I leave, and one for the woman beside him. Of course, he can't be who I thought he was, a guy I knew years ago in the Army whose last name began with S, his bunk next to mine. By night, a snoring noun. By day, a frenetic verb. Who, like the rest of us in those days, was trying not to screw up. Once a drill sergeant asked him kindly, "Are you ready for combat, son?" When he replied, "Yes, drill sergeant," the sergeant screamed, "You can never be ready for combat. You can only be prepared." I don't ask the bartender to send my regards, my compliments, my name. Now he's simply a man at a bar with his wife or lover or friend, two people recognized by a stranger for being just who they are not. "30 years ago, honey, my wife. For my wife on our 6-week anniversary. 30 years ago. Mac's shattered teeth can be pulled and the wire holding his jaw in a natural stillness will be removed. Let's say the injuries are consistent with the ice-covered streets and the dark color of his fur, the late hours, and a difficult drive from one minimum wage job to another, from daycare to the IGA in a car without a muffler. It could have been worse, after all. A man I once called friend described how he swerved not to avoid, but to hit a cat along a country Ohio roadside. And hit it he did, the intestines flying loose. Our small house still protects us on the solid corner of Washington and 14th Streets. The porch can be screened and Mac will sit again in the breezy sunlight. We have one of the best vets. Medicine dropper, drop by drop, we will have to feed him, but wrapped in a towel under my arm, day by day, he will grow stronger. So too, you and I. It's not the same world for a cat as it is for a child. Well, it is, but it isn't. Years ago, my jaw smashed against the windshield with the force of the breakers off Coronado Island, where we spent our honeymoon. Like the waves, I retreated and reformed, and learned to speak in a more compassionate voice. And you have suffered in your secret way. I knew we would marry when you showed me the yearbooks with your photos blotted out by your own hand. Our first act beyond what each of us alone is capable of is to save the life of your stupid cat, warming the medicine dropper of tuna broth between our thighs, husband and wife, 3 good eyes and 63 teeth between us. I hope this is funny. Recommendation for myself. And this has an epigraph from Henri Cartier-Bresson. Be honest to your subjectivity. Leaving out the best phrases from letters I have written for others, understands the obligation for improvement, works well with everybody, demonstrates how reliability and creativity can go together. I compose my own letter of recommendation. I am adaptable to various environments as long as I am required to stay at home and write letters while listening to the Ventures. If my responsibilities would include ignoring the telephone, except for my wife, of course, if a crucial skill would be rolling the dog's ball to him until he wants to stop before I do, if a sincere desire to hear what's being said to me results in cupping a hand behind an ear and bowing toward whoever is speaking, if squinting is an especially valued talent, then I am the perfect candidate for whatever position the aforementioned responsibilities describe. In all fairness, I should tell you that my wife feels I am antisocial and have an addictive personality. She says I chew nicotine gum like coca leaves. In addition, I cut a limb from the blue spruce in the front yard and ruined its symmetry. I ignore the bearded palms and enjoy watching unintentional ASMR videos on YouTube, especially wristwatch revival with Marshall. Some of you may know that. Sometimes I do eat peanuts and spoil my dinner. My handwriting confesses itself and is getting worse despite the aluminum lame fountain pen. I have never successfully baked anything with lemons. In conclusion, lately my focus has been less on my current employer and more about simple home remedies for seniors, with articles about cholesterol, Bruno stair chairs, and safe step tubs. But believe me, I am committed to lifelong learning, Chat GPT free. That's a relief, believe me. One more. And this is for my students as well and people I write with. And my colleagues as well, who over the years have been so terrific. Baiku. A title like this does not desire a haiku following below, but stretching out a bit while yet remaining brief, it wants to thank the writers with whom it gathered poems like acorns. This title reminds us and thanks us and you for sharing so much, and is a reminder to ignore everything except to keep writing and to laugh. Thank you. I appreciate that. Allow me to introduce the next reader, Mai Der Vang, who is the author of Yellow Rain, Grey Wolf Press 2021, which is the winner of the Lenore Marshall Poetry Prize from the Academy of American Poets. That's a big deal. An American Book Award, and a finalist for the 2022 Pulitzer Prize in Poetry. Along with Afterland by Grey Wolf Press in 2017, winner of the first book award from the Academy of American Poets, the recipient of a Lanham Literary Fellowship. Her poetry has appeared in Tin House, the American Poetry Review, and Poetry, among many other journals and anthologies. Please welcome Mai Der Vang.
Hi everyone, how y'all doing? Yeah, it's great to see so many familiar faces, current students, former students, colleagues, and just, faculty in our own department. Thanks for being here tonight. So I'm going to be sharing some new work, so we'll see how that goes. Right? It's always nerve-wracking when you're putting yourself out there again for the first time, it feels like. So I'm gonna make sure I don't mess this up, Brynn, but if I do, I will certainly, okay, there we go. Okay, so lately I've been really sort of obsessed and thinking about the sort of intersections of language and the spatial connections that happen when you put words in a place next to another word. That's writing, right? But when you're thinking deliberately about those connections. And so I have a series of poems I've been working on that I call my node poems because they're sort of connected almost as nodes. Let's see. And so if you may not be able to see it clearly, but I'll do my best to read it for all of you, and you can follow along on the different little nodes there. The title of this is called Absence Behind Me, Absence in Front of Me, Forever Reaching at a Ghost. Absence, like waking from a dream, only to realize I'm still in the dream. Still drenched from the rain behind me, still trying to escape the bed that brought me here. I hide from the absence in myself that empties me of love while I sleep and think, while I tire and run from a world becoming ash in my arms. What do I do with the voice in front of me that calls me to follow? Never look back, never stop, forever reaching at the moment, to sing, to lion, to laugh, break through, become the human that haunts a ghost. Yeah, so I'm just kind of experimenting and trying new things with my work, and for me it's been thinking about, just cross sections of language and how when we do that we create layers beyond layers that then are sort of just like, whoa, what am I doing here, And so one of the things I've been working on in this new collection is exploring also in relationship to language this animal. So I've been writing about animals really, and in particular I've been writing about an animal that is extremely rare and critically endangered. It's an animal called the saula, and it's only found in parts of Laos and Vietnam in a particular mountain range there. So I've been doing a lot of research and also exploring what does it mean that this animal is trying to survive in a landscape that haunts the memories of many people because of a war, right? Because of the war that the United States began in Vietnam and Laos. So that's where I'm going on. That's where I'm going with these next set of poems here, or actually this next one here. And one of the things that this animal does, so it's considered like the Asian unicorn because it has these two long, like, parallel horns, and it, when you look at it from the side, it kind of looks like a unicorn. I mean, I wish I had brought a photo, but y'all can Google that. But it's so interesting in the sense that it's rare. There are only a few hundred, fewer than 100 that remain, and I've been thinking a lot about this animal, and this animal is just finding its way into a lot of these poems. And in order to defend itself, one of the things it does is it'll run into a river or a stream, and then it'll back itself up against a boulder and just kind of like make it stand. And so this next poem draws upon this idea of it backing into a boulder and making it stand. So let me Let me make sure I can get this one up. Close this one. And this one is also in node format. Okay. So this one has a little bit longer title. Make your stand backing into a boulder, solitary in your steps, though never to forfeit the swords on your head. Make your stand firm on your feet, even as history says you will die, lose a war, and unground yourself from a dream. Don't let go, but in running, remember to fly. Think of an ocean backing into a melted boulder. Solitary in its expanse, it is never alone. To travel alone is to recognize the earth in yourself, how your father hides in your steps, though somewhere is a house you left behind, and somewhere is a forest without you in it. Another generation will find its way back. One more body to inherit the blessing, tongues never to forfeit the wish for reclamation, even as the 10 of swords on your palm says you've been hurt for a long time. Come now and claim your transformation. A crown of obsidian and moss dressed in velvet light. Come now and lower your head. Okay, I have one more, and this one's also visual, so I'm going to keep using Brynn's nice little laptop up here. Let me close this one out. This one's a little bit longer. It's a 20-page poem, but it doesn't take up like literally 20 pages. But it's, you know, this one was an interesting one for me to write. I, you know, for all of my life, I've been really obsessed with, you know, the stars and the night sky. I don't know if anyone here is all in, you know, it's really, so, but for me, like recently in the last few years, I've been experiencing this thing where I can't describe it, but every time I sort of, you know, am able to kind of look at the stars or really engage and interact with what's happening out there in the cosmos, I get sort of like a strange feeling of melancholia, if that makes any sense. Like I get depressed, I feel grief. And maybe that's because there's a feeling of knowing that there's something out there that you in your existence will never be able to understand or fully reach or grasp. And so I wanted to sort of explore that in this next poem. And it's, I'm going to try my best to show it here on the screen. The way that it's showing up on the screen, it will be in spread, so just try to picture it as a single page if you can. And this one is called, I Understand This Light to Be My Home. In the awareness, I am brought closer to my being from long before. In my awareness, there is only what I can take from the small spaces of knowing, an earnest ascendance imparted by way of transmissions from the grid. A voice calls out, unbroken below and above as the aura of faraway light. Language. There is a light that shimmers so deep it never goes anywhere but to shimmer. Light assumes its job is to shimmer, and so it is. But more than that, light is ancestral. Light is witness. Light is prehistory, blueprint of vibrations shifting through all directions of time. Language. Light as a hidden winter that leads to shadow as the growth. Light as first language of source. Light as both terrestrial and celestial. Light of long nights far up in the sky. I stare to the heavens and weep for the stars whose light I have always known and understood to be my rooting. Language. I once shared a life with the name of this light as I know it in the stars who gave me my body, as I know it in the frequencies of my footsteps, as I hear it in the code of a landscape imprinted on my fingers, as I spirit my eyes open from the inside, as I know and understand this light to be kin. Language. Consider then the pain of leaving this light, of losing the stars to spaces no longer lit by its truth. I am shaped in the spaces where the light does not reach, a need for what does not shimmer, but opening to the shadow to receive just as much light. I miss this light always. Light. Language. Then more light, ever more light, deficit of light to bring more light. Light, language, template of light to bring more love. Light. That is my one true wish, as I know and understand this light to be my home, as a knowing up there in the galaxy is me, and I am up there in my bones built from stars. Light, 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 light. Thank you all so very much. So I have the honor of presenting our newest faculty member, Brenna Womer. Brenna is a queer, child-free Latina prose writer and poet. She is the author of the full-length mixed-genre collections Unbrained from Flower Song Press, published in 2023, and Honeypot from Spuyten Duyvil, published in 2019, as well as the chapbooks Cost of Living from Finishing Line Press in 2022, and Atypical Cells of Undetermined Significance from C&R Press in 2018. Her work has appeared in the North American Review, Indiana Review, McSweeney's, Internet Tendency, and elsewhere. Welcome, Brenna.
So emotional. Oh my God, I got choked up in every single person's reading. I still pinch myself every single day that I get to be here, and I'm gonna cry. Work with these amazing people and you incredible students. Yeah, I am so lucky to be here. Thank you. I'm going to read 3 pieces of creative nonfiction. 2 of them are poems, but they are creative nonfiction. And then a third flash piece. Yeah, I'll get to it. It's almost 8. Okay. This one's called Shitty Father's Day Poem. It's a little on the nose. Did you know there's a species of male fruit bat that lactates so the female doesn't grow too heavy with milk to fly? Or that flamingos agree on a nesting site together and equally share in their eggs' incubation time? Did you know my father left a few days after I was cut into this world, that my mother healed alone while he played keeper at a soccer tournament? Or that my husband was held by his neck up a wall as a child for being a child, his father a handsome, devout Christian man? The male midwife toad gestates beneath the skin of his back legs, and others carry offspring instead in the wet of their mouths. How hard it must be for the busy new father not to swallow his eager little tadpoles whole. I write a lot about parents. I'm an only child. I was raised on military bases, moving around a lot, and a lot of that time was post 9/11, so my dad was deployed a lot, and I was homeschooled for a while too, so I was alone with them a lot, or missing them a lot, and as an only child, I spent a lot of time with or without them, and thinking about them and anticipating them. So I write a lot about them, and that's sort of my, Venita, you had a theme, I have a theme. It's it's parents for tonight. This one is called Paige. When I was a little girl, I had a friend named Paige. She was the first time I realized a common noun could also be a proper one. I went home with Paige and her mother after school once, and in the car she said her parents were getting a divorce. In her room, I asked if she wanted to play husband and wife. She said yes, and we wedged our small bodies beneath the bed frame, behind the skirt, and rubbed each other's pubic bones through cotton underwear. When we'd finished and crawled into the daylight, I told Paige that her father didn't love her anymore, that she was the reason her parents were getting a divorce. She cried and told her mother, who got angry and said it was time for me to leave. On the drive to my house, just Paige's mother and me, she asked why I'd say such a thing. I'd never even met Paige's father. I remember not knowing why, but feeling so satisfied. These are all pieces from my new collection called Unbrained, which is coming out on Flower Song Press, which is a Latine press out of the borderlands of Texas, McAllen, Texas. It'll be out early next month, which feels crazy to say. Yeah. This last piece is a flash piece of creative nonfiction written in a more traditional prose style. It's called Honey, Hunny. My mother had a parakeet when I was 12 years old, and for a while she clipped its wings with a pair of kitchen shears. My mother stayed home and, in the early days of Blogger, spent most of her time on the computer with the bird perched atop her head. As she stared at the screen, the bird would lean forward, pressing my mother's bangs flat against her forehead with its feathered chest, and clean her eyelashes, separating each hair with the hook of its beak and licking with its pink slug of a tongue. When my father got home from work, he and I would watch television and wait for dinner. Tuna casserole or spaghetti with meat sauce, my mother taking a quick break from her online life to make the meal. On nights she ate with us on the couch. As soon as she'd finished her food, she'd move back upstairs to the office where the bird's cage lived, next to the desk. My father called her hours at the computer doing the dishes, because that's always where she was when he thought she should be doing the dishes. After dinner, my mother opened the birdcage door and offered the little stoop of her pointer finger like a sign language X for the bird to take in its feet. They'd sit at the screen together, preening and posting until their 1 or 2 a.m. bedtime, long after my father and I had fallen asleep. My mother hated clipping the bird's wings. She didn't want to feel like its captor, like she was keeping it from doing what it was meant to. So one day, she stopped and let the jagged flight feathers grow into their natural taper, and the bird started flying free through the house. It became increasingly difficult to coax the bird down from curtain rods and light fixtures. We cleaned its shit off the rugs and mirrors and dining chairs we never sat in. We couldn't turn on the ceiling fans. Evenings into nights, though, my mother and the bird kept their usual routine, now with the office door closed. On a weekday while I was at school, my mother opened the back screen door to pull some laundry from the line, and the bird flew out. We'd all been so careful at first to open the door just a crack enough for our bodies to pass through, keeping the bird in our sights all the while. Someone was bound to slip up eventually, but I never thought it would be her. When I got home, my mother was staring up the tree in the backyard where I could see the bird's slight yellow body hugging the trunk. We watched it, whistling and cooing its name until dusk, and that night my mother sat alone at the computer. I don't remember if she cried. The next morning, when the bird wasn't in the backyard, the two of us searched the block for the bright spot of yellow and found it in a towering oak a few houses up. There were other birds in the tree with it, and they were chirping. The bird stayed in the neighborhood a day or two longer, gradually flitting from one new home to the next and always farther away from ours, until one day we took our morning walk to find the bird and didn't.